They're looking to see if they can trust you. Do you remember when every morning you used to get up early, jump into the shower, get yourself ready, out the door you went with a cup of coffee in hand and a day ready to go into the office? It's been a while since we've had those types of days, right? These days, many of us are having our coffee at home and walking the few steps to our desk. 2025 is seeing a lot of people actually return full time to the office. And for some of you, maybe you're brand new to working in an office, and it's going to be the first time that you're there every day. And it can be a bit daunting, right? I mean, all of those habits that we've gained, biting our nails or fidgeting a whole lot because we got a little nervous, suddenly we're on display when we're sitting next to our boss or in a meeting with all of our peers. And so what do we do as we return to the office? What body language should we be aware of? How can it help us? And how can it sabotage us? And what do we need to know in order to make sure that we're showing up as the best version of ourselves, but still authentically who we are? Well, that's what I'm going to answer today. We're going to be looking at your body language in the office. Now, many of us, as I said, have bad habits when it comes to body language. We fidget with our hands. I do that a lot, and it's something that I'm aware of. When we do it purposefully, that's different than when we're doing it with nerves, as I do now, and you see me sort of playing with my hands a little bit, I look nervous. Now, when I'm being purposeful with it, that's a whole different thing. It changes my demeanor. And so when we are in front of others, being aware of some of those nervous habits and choosing to be purposeful is really, really important. It's even more important when it's our turn to stand up in front of a room. What do we do when we are asked to be the presenter? This can be nerve-wracking. Many of us have gotten very used to being in front of a camera. This is all the audience is seeing. And we can hide some of those nervous habits down below the camera. When you're live, you don't have anywhere to hide. You're now in front of that audience, and it's your job not only to present that information, but to do so with both confidence and engagement with that audience. And so what do you do with your hands? And that's a question I get asked all the time. In fact, a few years back, I was traveling and I was at the airport and going through customs. And if you've ever gone through customs, you know that it is a bit nerve-wracking, first of all. And secondly, the customs agents don't tend to be the friendliest people in the world. And so, I'm lined up as everybody is going through, and my turn comes along, and I notice that the guy that I'm going to, he looks stern and he looks a little bit mean. And I walk up and hand over my passport, and he has a look at my passport. And of course, they always ask, why are you traveling and what do you do? And so I happen to be traveling on business for that particular trip. And so I said I was presenting at a conference, and I said, I'm a speaker's coach. I help people present better. And he pauses, he looks at me with that very stern glare. If you've ever been in front of a customs agent, that glare in that moment, you think, oh my goodness, what did I say? Am I not going to be able to go through? And he says, I have a question for you. And I said, okay, shoot. He goes, what do I do with my hands when I present? My goodness, I thought I was going to get denied at the border. Instead, this guy wants a speaker's coaching lesson. I think the thing about our hands is one of our weakest areas, because we have these appendages that seem to have a mind of their own when we are just talking. I'm talking to you. My hands, I move them very naturally. But suddenly when we're in front of an audience, they become the most awkward thing that we have on our body. We don't know what to do with them. We're hiding them. We're putting them behind our back. We're playing with our hands. We don't know what to do with them. But our hands are conveying a lot, because what our hands are doing is they're conveying parts of our body that convey things like emotion when I'm here, or thinking when I do things like this. And these are gestures that we do very, very naturally. I might say to you, the other day I was talking to someone, or I was thinking. And when you're just talking, we do that. But when we're in front of an audience, for whatever reason, and again, if we're at the front of the room, even just doing a presentation, suddenly those hands have no natural places to go. So what do you do? What do you do with them? Well, the first thing is you want to make sure that the audience can see your hands. You don't want them hanging down by your sides, because what that does is it shows the audience that you're really not that interested. When my hands hang down like this, and actually you can't even see them, but you know right now that they're not doing anything. Notice how uninteresting I've become. Notice that my energy has actually dropped. Now watch, as soon as I bring them up, do you notice the difference? That was just simply changing my hands. And when I'm presenting, if I'm standing in front of an audience, I want to make sure I've got my hands up at waist level at all times. I want them to be open so you can see my palms. And I want to be using them, gesturing naturally, so that you can see that I have nothing to hide, right? You can see my hands, but also that I'm interested in you. Sometimes I'm giving my words away to you. Sometimes I'm being expansive and showing you the full picture. But what I'm always doing is keeping my hands right at that waist level. So that means that my shoulders are dropped a little bit. It means that my elbows are floated away from my body just slightly and bent. And there my hands have this natural place to go. Now, you may be saying to me, but that's not natural at all. Well, perhaps if you start watching presenters or speakers, or even just people having conversations, that's actually their natural stance. But as soon as I call attention to it, it feels awkward and weird, and you feel uncomfortable. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to just get used to it. Try it. Use your hands. Allow them to move with your words. One of the most powerful things I think I read when I first got into this work many years ago was that I remember reading a study, and it was talking about gestures. And they were studying the impact of gesturing on our brain. How is gesturing connected to our brain? And what I thought was fascinating was, in this study, they mentioned that even blind people gesture. Isn't that interesting, right? A person who can't even see their own gestures are using them to convey their message. And so that's part of what our gesturing is doing, is it is giving some form of impact to the words we're saying. It creates a consistency. Our words and our gestures align, and that's what's really, really important. So use your hands. There are many other things that you should be thinking of. If you've been in front of a camera, as I have for as many years as we've all been working from our homes, you'll know that your face is really important. And your face conveys a lot of information. And maybe you haven't quite yet figured out how to use your face for maximum impact. So let's talk a little bit about that. Because no matter if you're in front of a camera or in front of a room where you're presenting to people, where do people look? They look at your face. Why? Because they're looking to see if they can trust you, if you're believable, right? We believe as humans that we can see whether somebody is telling a truth or perhaps stretching a truth. And so your face is conveying that. And what we're really looking for is connection as well. So are you making eye contact with your audience? When we think about eye contact, it's a big thing. If I'm looking into a camera as I am right now, when I am looking directly into that camera, I'm making eye contact with you through that camera. If I'm a presenter and I'm at the front of a room and there are maybe 10 or 20 or 100 or 1,000 people, how do I make eye contact with all of them? Well, of course you can't. But what you can do is you can find people throughout that room or throughout that audience who are in different places. And you can choose to connect directly with them for 20 or 30 seconds. So as you're presenting, as you're speaking, by doing that, what you're showing that section of the audience is you're paying attention to them. And everybody for about 10 feet around feels like you're having eye contact with them as well. You know they're there. And if you're in an auditorium that has an upper balcony where you can't actually see anyone, just simply looking up and at that upper balcony for a little bit tells that audience that you see them. So making eye contact is really important. Now, I will tell you one caveat to that, which is depending upon the country you're in. Here, I'm in North America, and eye contact is something that we see as being important and as a big part of communication. But if you're in some other cultures, eye contact is something that you need to be aware of that can be either confrontational or seen as being disrespectful. So I encourage you to look at the cultural norms within the country you're in. If you're in North America, I can tell you that it is something we value. But your face has more than just eyes. You've got a mouth, and what do we do the most with our mouth? We do exactly what I've just done. We smile. Smiling is one of the easiest ways to connect with your audience. And when you smile, you want to choose a smile that feels genuine and engaging. Now, as humans, we have access to over 200 different smiles. So which smile is the best one to use? Well, there were studies done on this, and there was a scientist in the 1800s, but his last name was Duchenne, and he came up with exactly the smile that connects best with audiences. And it's actually named after him. It's called the Duchenne smile. And it looks like this. It starts down here in your mouth, and it slowly opens up, and it climbs up to your cheeks. And as that happens, your eyes crinkle a little bit. And now you hold and sustain that smile for 20 to 30 seconds. And that is a genuine smile, a smile that connects with your audience. And if you really want to connect with them, you can add in an eyebrow lift. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're showing them that you recognize them. Eyebrow lifts are a universal language that mammals have to recognize those who are from their tribe or their species. Animals do it, humans do it, and if you don't believe me, next time you're walking down the road, look at somebody and just raise your eyebrows. They'll probably say, "Hey, do I know you?" It's a funny thing. We've got eyebrows, we've got smiles, we've got eye contact, but there are so many other micro gestures that your face shows. And so use your face, be aware of it. If you're telling a story, you might want to look a little mischievous, or maybe surprised, or even afraid. So use the micro gestures that you have access to with your face and engage with that audience. We also have something called stage presence. And it's a little bit hard to understand, but stage presence is one of those things that is a combination of your mindset, your body language, and your vocalization. It's where they all come together. Because when you are very confident on three of those, you're standing in a way that shows the audience that you're fully in control and ready to present with kindness. Because really, when you are the presenter in front of a room, it's not about you. It's about your audience. And so when we show up fully confident in who we are and the way that we're conveying our body and our words and the voice that we're using with that, our audience feels taken care of. And what that is me being comfortable in how I perceive myself. What do I believe about myself? Do I believe that I have information that's important for my audience to hear? Do I think I'm pretty good at this? You don't have to think you're great at it, but if you think you're pretty good at it, you know how to convey this information, and that information has value, you are confident or have confidence in your presentation skills. But there's another piece to that mindset, which is, what do I believe that my audience believes about me? Now that's a projection, right? And so I'm in control of it. I can choose to believe that the audience thinks I don't know anything about what I'm saying, or thinks that I'm not any good at it. And that's going to sabotage me, because now what's going to happen is I'm going to be looking out at that audience as if they're my enemy, as if they don't even want to be there. Or I can choose to look out at my audience and think they see me as the thought leader I am. They see me as an expert in my field. They see me as someone who has experience and who understands this topic in a way that they don't, and that they're curious and open to hearing what I have to say. Now, my presence on stage is solid. And when I'm standing up there, fully congruent with what I think of myself and what I think my audience thinks of me, then my audience actually sees me in that way. And so that stage status, that presence, suddenly becomes very strong. And it shows up in places like my shoulders. I'm not stiff, they're relaxed. Hear my voice. My vocalization is natural because I've relaxed my body enough to let me access my breathing and my voice. And I'm not trying to hurry through. So when we're in front of an audience, our mindset is as important as the content that we're going to be presenting. Because when our mindset is fully aligned, our body relaxes. And what that does is it allows us to also access our memory, remembering what it is we want to say, remembering all the nuance of what it is. Now, I know many of you are saying, well, that's way easier said than done, because nerves are something that I can't control. Well, nerves are real. I will give you that. There's no question. In fact, I was working with a neuroscientist yesterday, and we were talking about this very thing. And the reality is our brain will go into fight, flight, or freeze. We have all had those experiences. And when we have done the work on our mindset, it helps us in that moment. But we can also do some things to make sure that we're taking care of our body. So as you go back into the office, whether it be full-time or part-time, or you find yourself having to present in front of an audience, or you're now talking more readily person to person, how do I take care of my own anxiety? Give myself permission to be a little bit afraid, but then take care of myself through it. You're probably going to think, well, this is really not what I was expecting you to tell me. But the first one is actually really easy. Drink a lot of water. That probably sounds crazy, but here's why. When we are in an anxious state, our brain is producing a lot of neurochemicals, specifically adrenaline, but there are others, dopamine, serotonin, things like that. And it's not just our brain. Serotonin actually is produced in different parts of our body, but these neurochemicals and hormones are powerful. They are like drugs. And if we are in a state of dehydration, they hit us harder. So if you are fully hydrated all the time, and of course when you're going back into the office, there's that anxiety. What you've done is you've started off giving your body a little bit of a lift in terms of being able to manage through that. So make sure you're well hydrated. So that's number one. That's a physical thing. We can all do that. Make sure you drink lots of water. It's important. Secondly, make sure that you are getting sleep. And if you're nervous, that can be easier said than done. Caffeine would be another thing. Stay away from it. So, because that's going to help you to not sleep if you've got too much caffeine, but also it's going to make you jittery if you're already nervous. So the physical aspects of managing your nerves are important. There's other pieces. This is both physical as well as emotional and mental, which is, do you have a morning routine? Are you taking care of yourself in the morning before you're heading out the door? Are you bolting up out of bed, throwing on some clothes and rushing out the door to catch the train to get to the office? Or are you meditating? Are you eating? Are you taking care of yourself? Because the way in which you start your day, it's going to color everything you do after that. So make sure that you are giving yourself enough time in the morning to get out the door in such a way that you feel taken care of. I know we all have different things that make our mornings difficult. And I'm not going to say that this is an easy one, and you may not be able to do it every day. For me, one of the things that I do is I wake up very early. I love those quiet moments in the morning before anyone else is awake, before the world is awake. It's still dark outside. And I meditate. That's really important for me. It brings my anxiety down. It allows me to show up as the best version of myself. Spend some time meditating. Give your brain that opportunity to relax and rest and go into a state that is restorative for you. Now, when you're in the office, recognize your own body language and what it's telling you and what it's telling other people. You know, if you find yourself fiddling with your hands or fiddling with things, notice that. Notice that you're anxious before you get into a place of meltdown. Maybe what you need at that point is to go for a walk. Maybe you're getting to that place of anxiety that you need to just take a moment. Maybe it's just go to the washroom and sit quietly for 5 minutes. Whatever it is you need, go and do that. Take care of yourself before the anxiety hits. And if you are presenting, a really good way to help you to get into that mode of presentation and to hype yourself to the degree that you need to be hyped and be able to manage through the nerves that you know are going to come along is to spend about 5 minutes alone before you present. So if your meeting is at noon, maybe at 11:30, go into the washroom, go into a stall, close the door, breathe. And I want you to take a moment while you're there and imagine what's going to happen when you're in the room presenting. So what you do, you close your eyes and you imagine that you're about to be called onto stage, okay? And you're going to see yourself in your mind's eye walking to the front of that room, giving that presentation. And as you're giving that presentation, you're looking around and you're seeing everybody tracking with you. They are writing, they're asking good questions, they're engaged. Every person is hanging on every word you're saying. And then you end that presentation and that room just erupts. There is clapping and laughter and congratulations. You nailed that presentation. And you go back to your seat and you're breathing, and everybody is so excited for the idea or the presentation you just gave. You are an amazing presenter. Now, you come back into your body and feel that feeling of elation, that feeling of accomplishment, that feeling of service, that feeling of impact, whatever it is for you that feeling gives you. Now hold on to that. And that is what you take into your presentation, because that's who you are. And that's what you have the capacity to become. So when you share your ideas, you're helping everyone else. You are being of service. Now, I can't wait to hear what you're going to create. And I want you to tell me what resonated most for you in this video. I'd love to hear your presentation stories. Are you wondering what to do with your hands, and have you practiced it? And did it work? I'd love to hear your feedback. And if there's anything else that you want to know about, just leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want even more tips on what to do with your body.